PHP has a large number of database extensions. At the time of recording, this page in the online documentation shows there are 4 abstraction layers and 23 vendor-specific database extensions. The vendor-specific extensions use dedicated functions that interact only with a particular type of database. For example, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, or PostgreSQL. So if you create an application with one of these extensions and later change your mind about the database you're going to use, you have to rewrite all of your code. The idea of an abstraction layer, on the other hand, is to make your code more portable. Instead of it working with just one database, it'll work with several, as long as the PHP server has the correct libraries or drivers installed. In this course, we're going to look at one abstraction layer, PDO, which stands for PHP Data Objects, and at the object-oriented version of the vendor-specific database extension for MySQL. But why choose those two? Well, among the abstraction layers, PDO is the only one that's installed by default in PHP. It's also the most versatile. Let's take a look at the list of PDO drivers and the databases they support. They include all the most important databases, including Microsoft SQL Server, PostgreSQL, and MySQL. However, it's important to realize that the drivers need to be installed separately in PHP. Although PDO is installed by default, the drivers available on individual servers depend on how the server has been configured. You need to run PHP info on your server to check which drivers are installed. Let's take a look at the configuration setup on my local testing server. Here is PDO and PDO MySQL and SQLite, but nothing else. On Windows, extra drivers can be enabled by loading the appropriate DLL file with php.ini, but on Mac and Linux they need to be compiled into PHP. Setting up PDO drivers is beyond the scope of this course. Speak to your server administrator or hosting company if you need help in doing so. The vendor-specific database extension covered in this course is MySQL Improved, or MySQLi. I've chosen it because MySQL is still by far the most widely used database with PHP. Although PDO supports MySQL, some features are easier to implement with MySQLi, because the extension is designed specifically to work with MySQL. Code written using MySQLi will also work with MariaDB, the open-source database that some Linux distributions have adopted as a replacement for MySQL. Perhaps one of the most important considerations is that the original MySQL functions have been deprecated since PHP 5.5. That means functions such as MySQL Query and MySQL Fetcher Sock will eventually be removed from PHP. If your scripts still use them, you need to replace them either with PDO or MySQLi before they stop working. MySQLi has 2 interfaces, procedural and object-oriented. There's no significant difference in performance between the 2 interfaces. The procedural version was mainly designed to simplify the transition from the old MySQL functions. However, this course will use the object-oriented interface for 2 reasons. The code is more concise, so it involves less typing, and in my opinion, the shorter code makes it easier to read.